Let's see. Fetterman's debate performance has Democrats on edge about PA Senate race. It was tough. Fetterman supporters voiced concern that debate performance. What's this? So, looks like, it was tough. Fetterman supporters voiced concern that debate performance will sway undecided voters. Yeah, okay. Let's see what else there is. Ooh. I knew this debate wasn't going to be easy after having a stroke 5 months ago. I don't think that's ever been done before in American political history. Hasn't been done before in American political history? Maybe you're right, John, but who knows? I know one thing, though. You inspired a lot of people with this one, so I think I need to do a little video on why I, as a disabled person, am respecting John Fetterman. Hey, so I kind of want to talk a little bit about something, and don't let these things behind me kind of make you think of being biased, because I'm not. And it has a lot to do with John Fetterman, but it's more of a personal thing as opposed to the fact that I support John Fetterman. I'm a volunteer with the Pennsylvania Democratic Party type thing. It's more of my own personal, yeah, I can relate to this type story. Has a lot to do with ableism, which, as we know, is basically, people with disabilities being told, you suck. That's probably the best way I can put it. That's basically what it is. It's people with disabilities being told, you suck. And it's trying to make life a living hell for them. Reason why I'm bringing this up is this has a lot to do with the fact that in May of this year, John Fetterman had a stroke. And, he's been bouncing back from it pretty well, actually. And he's been very open about the stuff he's dealt with this stroke, with his recovery. And he still gets a lot of grief for it. And I mean, an awful lot of grief. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that because of his stroke, he's had to use assistive devices. And, for instance, there was an interview he did with MSNBC where he had a video monitor in front of him. And the video monitor was showing the stuff that the reporter was saying to him. During not the presidential debate, I'm sorry, it's 1:30 in the morning and I'm doing this video, so my brain's a little off, but I have to do this anyway. During the Pennsylvania Senate debate, which was, today's October 27th, so it was about 2 days ago, October 25th, there were these very large monitors, and they were right behind the moderators, and they were providing a captioning to assist John Fetterman in understanding what the moderators were asking of him and Dr. Oz, and what Dr. Oz was saying as well. And they made it clear why these monitors were used during this debate right in the beginning. I was actually sitting there on a Zoom call. It was me and a group of PA Dems, volunteers, and staffers, and we were watching the live feed of this debate from a station out in Harrisburg, and this is what we learned from it. So, yeah. And people are still raising holy hell about this, making it seem like as if his doing this is going to undermine his work if he gets elected to the Senate. And to that, I have to say, bullshit. I am somebody with a disability, and I am pissed as somebody with a disability that this is happening in 2022. I thought we were past this stuff. I mean, I thought the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990 pretty much made it to where it was like, okay, disabled people, you're cool. But we are still fighting for our rights. I had somebody who made a comment on social media. I was looking at social media recently. There was a comment by somebody who they said that they needed a simple accommodation for their job, couldn't get it, and they ended up losing their job. I have read so many stories like that, and I am like, what the hell? I said it. I myself have had issues with a disability. I don't look it, but I have. That crutch back there, by the way, is from when I had a leg injury about a few weeks ago. I just haven't moved it. I actually had to use it a couple days ago because I messed up my knee. So, pay no attention to that for a second. I have dealt with a disability. I've had a learning disability since I was a kid. I have had to use visual cues in order to understand things, like when I would be in school and the teacher would be lecturing. When they start writing stuff on the chalkboard, or much later on, like college era, when they started using PowerPoint, it helped me understand things a little more, because you saw the written words that kind of gave like a synopsis of what the teacher or professor was saying, and it helped me a lot. I've also had it where like I had to tape record some lectures because of that reason, and thankfully I had some professors and some teachers that very much understood. And that's a shocker too, because in the United States, even though we have ADA, private institutions have loopholes, and I actually got my bachelor's degree from a private university in New Jersey. But I remember they went to great strides to make sure that I had what I needed to help me. Even to the point where, like, one of my problems with my learning disability is I have issues with math. And it ended up to the point where, in order for me to graduate on time, math was the one thing that was holding me back. And they found that I could forego like this algebra type math, if you will. And I ended up getting a waiver to where I could take like a political statistics course and it would all be good. So there you go. But yeah, it drives me nuts. I mean, I dealt with that. In fact, sometimes when I do my videos, I will have something like I will have like I used to have it where I would have like a Word document right on the same monitor as my video camera one on my MacBook. I was trying to figure out the right words. But, other times, and I've had people comment on Twitter about this saying, "Oh, it looks too distracting when you do this." To those people, shut up. But like I always got comments about how I would look at my phone. And, the one person who did this was actually commented about this was a Twitter user in Canada. And I wanted to scream. I actually wanted to get a plane ticket to Canada, find her, and be like, "You're an ableist bitch. And then get on the plane back to Philadelphia." But I didn't. And, the reason why I do that is because I will have notes that I wrote, and because of my learning disability, because of issues I have with my hands, it's always a little more difficult to actually handwrite the notes. So I find that text that's typed is very easy. So that's why, like, in a lot of videos, I would be looking at my phone. I would be looking at notes on my phone. I actually have since kind of upgraded because of my work with PA Dems and the fact that my MacBook battery has not been very good for the last couple of months. I actually had to go and buy a Chromebook. Just $80 I spent. And, on this, what I will tend to do is I will tend to have the notes right there in front of me. And it'll serve it the same purpose. And the reason why is because, unfortunately, the one problem I have is I have a slow processing speed. And it's like my brain, my sister always described this better. My brain and my mouth don't sync up very well. So, yeah. That's why I always have something in front of me to where it may look like I'm looking down or I'm being distracted, but the reality is I'm just doing it because I have notes. Another thing is I do have, even though you wouldn't believe it because of my adventure videos, I do have a little bit of a mobility issue. I have a nerve disorder known as complex regional pain syndrome. I actually have the less severe version, type 1, which, for those of you that know about CRPS, that was commonly known as RSD back in the day. But it does cause some issues with walking and everything, actually, hence the crutch over there, because I fractured my ankle back in September, and I was in a boot for 6 weeks. As a result, the muscles in my knee, which I had problems with for years, that ended up being weakened, and I actually had bad aggravation and had to use that crutch for like 2 days. before I could finally go to the orthopedic, and he did a cortisone injection, which should be good for about 6 weeks or so, give or take. I'm getting gel shots anyway in that knee, so I don't care. But I tend to have these moments where I have difficulty walking. I will walk very weirdly at times with a slight limp. Sometimes I will look like I'm walking kind of stiffly not only because of the pain, but I have 2 shot discs in my back from an accident I had in the 90s where I fell down. I actually fell down a flight of stairs, okay? So that's what caused a lot of this bullshit. And it was so bad that I actually had a job at a university bookstore. And here, the manager, he used to make rude remarks. And he actually called me Frankenstein once. He got away with it too, because I had some documentation. He was able to bury it and everything else. And here, I was one of only 2 people let go. The other one was like even more part-time. And it wasn't a case of last hired, first fired in my case, because a lot of people who were hired after me ended up staying. I filed a complaint with the feds with that. I forgot what it stands for, but it's EEOC. And I said about disability discrimination because of the fact that this boss was able to bury a lot of shit. They sent me a letter saying we don't see a problem, but we would recommend you filing a lawsuit. I decided not to because of the fact that I realized that they buried a lot of the stuff. So there's that. I also have chronic migraine to where my vision gets a little screwy. It's weird with me because like if I read like printed text, like if I read a book, sometimes the words will get all backwards, but I can still see them. I'm not dyslexic. I've been tested for that. It's basically just something with the migraines where I get what's known as an ocular migraine. And I've learned to adapt to it, thankfully. I have different little things that I do for that, like my phone, my Chromebook, my MacBook. I have it where I use the blue light filter a lot. I also have it where on my MacBook and my Chromebook, the cursor arrow is a little larger than it should be for some people, but I put it that way because there's a lot of times I'll be like, where the hell is my cursor? Even though Mac OS has a thing where if you kind of move your finger across the trackpad really fast or take your mouse and move it across the work surface really fast, that cursor arrow will expand. But I find it easier just to flip it on the settings. So there's that. And I use this stuff, and I've been using this stuff for years because it helps me. Just like that captioning tool helped John Fetterman. And, I've been following a lot of stuff with him for years. I mean, I've been following stuff with him ever since he was elected lieutenant governor of Pennsylvania. And I've been following a lot with the stuff he's gone through with the stroke and everything because I've lost several people close to me to strokes. My older sister had a stroke back in 2020. She actually had a stroke in her sleep and died. I have a grandfather and an aunt who have died from complications related to a stroke. I have several close friends who have had strokes. A couple of them have died, and a couple of them have survived. So I've been following it because of that reason. And to be perfectly honest with you, I don't understand what's the big deal, because I have known people who have had strokes that are in a lot worse condition. I knew a guy who had a stroke, and he was able to do a lot after a stroke. I mean, he was still pretty much active, but he had some limitations where he didn't have good use of the one side of his body. He had to have like different things to adjust to where he could drive. He could drive his car, he could use his computer, etc., etc., etc. And he had some of the speech impediments that John Fetterman is having now. But, I remember I used to always, because I knew this guy from when I volunteered at a hospital. I used to always sit down and talk to him, and he was sharp as a tack. I mean, he did a lot of stuff with computers before his stroke, and he told me things about information technology, about computers that I would not have known otherwise. And I have a degree in communication. I mean, we can't judge a book by its cover, really. And I think somebody from the Fetterman campaign said it best, because I have a couple friends from the Fetterman campaign. He will get better. But Dr. Oz's ignorance that he has displayed both before the campaign and after now in the midst of this campaign, which has like 12 more days to election day, that ignorance will still be there. And unfortunately, I know this for a fact because I know thousands of people that are like Mehmet Oz. Thankfully, none of them are in healthcare, because a doctor mocking a stroke victim or a stroke survivor is like the worst thing in the world. Trust me. But, I've known a lot of people like Mehmet Oz, and they are horrible. So yeah, I started being a supporter of John Fetterman because, I like the fact that he wasn't your typical politician. I mean, you think about it, most politicians we see are walking out in the nice suits, or the bad suits if you're Donald Trump. John Fetterman was like walking out in a pair of shorts and a t-shirt, or like when I saw him at a rally in Bucks County, a hoodie and a pair of jeans. I actually have a picture of me with John Fetterman where he's wearing that damn hoodie. And so I was like, yeah, this is not your typical politician, because he's not putting on airs. He's not he's not pretending to be anything more than just, you know, John. And, you know, I went into this because I liked that. I liked the fact that he and his wife have done things to help their community. Because, I, like I said, I've been following them ever since John Fetterman was elected lieutenant governor. You know, Giselle Fetterman has like this little thing called the Free Store, and it's in Braddock, Pennsylvania, where John was mayor, and you know they give away so many things to those who need it, and you know that's why I started really really following them. And you know I started supporting them because yeah, John Fetterman gets a lot of comparison to Bernie Sanders. And you know during the 2020 presidential election I was at first for Cory Booker, and then after he dropped out I was like, okay, Biden. But you know I I see of a lot more of a humanitarian side. So that's why. But now, ever since the stroke, and ever since he opened up about what he's gone through with not only the stroke, but also with the things that he uses, like the assistive devices, I I look at him differently. I look at him as somebody that a person with a disability, no matter what the disability is, or how old or how young they are, can look at him and be like, I can do that? And to paraphrase Barack Obama, yes, you can. So, yeah, that's why I'm angry about the ableists. And that's why I'm proud to say that I support John Fetterman. And I know this is going to get a lot of hate on YouTube, but I really don't care right now because it's coming from the heart. And sometimes your best stories and your best intentions and your best messages come from there. So I don't care if anybody hates me on it. In fact, I screen comments, by the way. All right? So feel free to like, comment, subscribe. Click on the notification bell. And, you know, don't forget to be awesome. Bye.